Hey guys, welcome to my Hellfire Citadel guide for Ret Paladins in Warlord's Drainer patch 6.2.4. This is not, as a disclaimer, this is not a DPS guide like how to Ret. For that, I do have a link to my video in the description below. This is more of just like talents, glyphs, abilities, trinkets, setups I use and things I think about as I'm doing the fights. So, without further ado, we got a Hellfire Citadel here to kick it off. Now for this one I use Glyph of Mass Exorcism for some extra AoE off your Exo. And Final Verdict, and Holy Prism. Now at the beginning here, definitely get some AoE. Try if you can to Divine Storm on the first 3 Holy Power if all the mobs are alive, just because they die so quickly, and if not, just Final Verdict, that's fine as well. But you do want to try to squeeze in AoE where you can fit it, especially if the mobs are about to die soon, which is kind of important in this fight. If there's a lot of stuff that's about to die and you're like, do I need my Final Verdict buff? Or do I need, or should I just try to Divine Storm? Then I just think about if they're going to survive till you get another 3 Holy Power. Now, the reason I take Holy Prism on this fight rather than, say, Light's Hammer is because these things land in random places. If you don't know how your tanks are going to do or where they're going to put them, it can make positioning pretty difficult, and most things don't last 14 seconds, so you don't get full value out of it. So I generally just use Holy Prism. If that more often, you just, use and forget, like Fire and Forget. And so it's just a little nice. And I do use a macro for it, so I self-cast, so I'm not trying to target myself or someone else to use it. So I can just use it as an ability. That way it hits 5 targets rather than hitting 1 target and healing a bunch of us. One thing to note, do try to snipe Hammer of Wrath hits on low health mobs, because it gives you more damage and more holy power, which translates to more damage on everything. For the most part, you'll be spending your holy power on Final Verdict if it's only one mob, like right here. So here, when I get up, I get enough holy power, I will Final Verdict, and then I'll consider Divine Storm. So here, Divine Storm, because there's several mobs I have the buff, and then if I get buffed Divine Storm the proc, anything like 2 or more is worth using that on. Now, generally, if you can, try to buff your Final Verdict, buff with your Final Verdict before you use that. But again, if you're going to miss an opportunity for good AoE, because the mobs are going to die really quickly, then just go ahead and use the AoE. The reason I take Final Verdict over Seraphim is it's just less trouble. Seraphim, sometimes you'll end up wanting to use it, but then it's nothing's around, everything's dead. So with Final Verdict, you don't have to worry about it, plus it kind of helps your AoE if you manage it correctly. So most of this fight used to be AoE, and right here is a big thing, so if I got any procs here, I would use them immediately, because I know everything's dying very, very quickly. And then when you're on a high priority target or something that's alone, then just go ahead and Final Verdict instead. Plus it gives you a buff, like right there, see I got a buff from Final Verdict. I use the Empowered Divine Storm, and here I'm just spamming Divine Storm because I got a lot of procs. I don't find it worth it to try to squeeze in Final Verdicts in there when you get a big chain like that. Just kind of go ahead and take care of the AoE, plus things die rather quickly on this fight. So basically AoE where you can, and then when there's not that many mobs up or you don't have any procs, go ahead and Final Verdict. And that's pretty much how it goes. Make sure you're using your wings at useful times. You still want to line it up with Ring if possible, but it's a little wonky on this fight. I lose track of it sometimes when I use Holy Prism because I don't have that 1 minute cooldown to kind of base my timing off of. But when you do use it, spam as many hammers as you can. So hammer, Crusader Strike, or Hammer of Righteousness, then hammer, and then spend the holy power, and so on. So here, you look and you see a bunch of mobs spawn. So, I have Final Verdict. I should go over there, Divine Storm real quick. Now, obviously, if you're progressing on this fight, you may be asked to not AoE so much, but obviously if you're kind of on farm here and just trying to push numbers, still hit priority targets like terrors, like the berserkers, like the vehicles that are dangerous, but, when you get a chance, go over, get a little Divine Storm action going, and then go back and hit the target that you were supposed to. So here, you got Terror. Make sure I'm using Hammer of Wrath, getting those extra holy powers, the extra damage from it, because it does a lot of damage. And here I see, okay, a lot of stuff is spawning. I've got the buff, so I'm going to go ahead and Divine Storm right away. I'll do it again because a lot of these are Iron Dragoons. I don't expect they'll live that long. In fact, they don't. And so it was good to snatch that AoE when I could. Now, aside from Crusader Strike or Hammer of the Righteous, when you're AoEing, obviously your Exorcism is going to be quite strong with the glyph for big packs, rather than Judgment, say, but Hammer of Righteousness is quite good, considering their Mastery does buff it, so to keep that in mind. And here we've got a couple things, so I'll just Final Verdict to get that buff. Now, as a note, when you Final Verdict and you have the Divine Storm buffed, extra buff here that you can get, it is worth it on single target if you don't have anything coming up to use it, just like it was in Blackrock Foundry way back. It is worth it, but I mean, if you know there's AoE coming or there's a possibility of a lot of mobs coming before the buff wears off, you want to save it, of course, because they'll do a heck of a lot more when you're hitting multiple things, not just one target. Here we go, some low health things. Execute when I can. Hammer of Wrath. Build up Holy Power. And just make sure, the one thing to watch too is your positioning with Holy Prism. Just make sure you're hitting at least 5 targets, which is the max, if you can. So like there, the mobs were split, so I kind of walked in between them since I'm self-targeting with it, and then just used it so it hit 5 mobs. And that's pretty much it. Just lots of AoE. Still hit priority targets, line up your cooldowns if possible with things like Ring or when they hero, and so on. And that is pretty much it. Now at the very end here you can of course pad your numbers, because you know the fight's over. Once you see this Flame Belcher, if all the boxes have been turned in, it will die. So feel free to pad your numbers at this point. And that's all there is to Hellfire Assault. It's a nice easy intro fight for Ret, and pretty nice for AoE. Moving on to Iron Reaver, it's the pure single target fight, so you're going to switch out to Seraphim, Execution Sentence, and I use Glyph of Judgment just in case you get the bomb phase, and just a little extra range on your Judgment helps you if you're using Long Arm of the Law to kind of catch up with her and Blitz. So, beginning of the pool, go and pre-pot, and get some Holy Power abilities. Generally I'll Exo first just because it's range. Normally I would Crusader if I could. And then as soon as they pop Ring, pop your Avenging Wrath. Really important. And then just build up Holy Power, so Wings, as soon as they ring, build up to 5, Seraphim, and then Execution Sentence. And then during this, basically your rotation is just Hammer of Wrath, Crusader Strike. Hammer of Wrath, Crusader Strike. I did a little, I misspoke a little in my other video, but Crusader Strike does do the most damage out of your builders because Mastery buffs it, especially the better gear level you get, basically, and the more mastery you get, the better your Crusader Strike gets. So during those times, you will always spam it alongside Hammer of Wrath being, of course, a little bit higher priority because it does more damage, and is also buffed by mastery. But yeah, so just Hammer, Crusader, Hammer, spend it on Templar's Verdicts, and then keep going like that. Now, one thing to watch, always watch your Seraphim timer. And on this fight, if you know your guild's going to kill it, or your group rather, is going to kill it very, very quickly, like before she flies up, I find it's really worth it to use Wings on the second Seraphim, rather than saving it for a minute or so, like you normally will do on a longer fight. And here I take a ride with her. It's a little cheesy. You shouldn't do it, obviously, if you guys are struggling, especially on the healing, but use your Divine Protection if you do on Glyph so that the fire damage isn't too strong on you. But use it, every 30 seconds until you run out of charges and have to wait for Ring Up to come up again, if it's going to be a short fight, because there's no reason. You're basically wasting charges if you don't, because you don't get to use all of them. Now, if you know it's going to be like a full flight phase and then like some more time in phase 2 as progression, then you can do it every minute like you normally would, just because it'd be a little longer. In this one, I did do it because I expected it to be quick, but the group was a little subpar. I think we had a bunch of alts going on, so we did end up getting a flight phase here. But once you get to execute phase, don't forget, Hammer of Wrath first, then Crusader Strike. Then if you want to do damage, because you're always going to have enough Holy Power, you can actually Exorcism before Judgment, because it does do more damage than Judgment does, as neither are affected by Mastery. Now, if you're popping Ring, you want to make sure either one, you, like me here, get caught on the way back, but pop a cooldown for it, so the explosion hits, or 2, just don't follow her at all when she goes away, and just make sure you're in range of it, like within 20 yards of her when she comes back. Generally using a Judgment when she comes back flying back will help you with the little speed boost, or speed of light if you took that. Now if you get to bomb phase like this, you can use Seraphim. Try to use it early if you can, just because the phase doesn't last super long, so you don't want to miss out. You want to have it up when she comes back. If you run into the oil like I did, you can always use Emancipation or Hand of Freedom on yourself. And this is kind of a little bit where, Glyph of Judgment is kind of nice. You get a little extra range. If you're using Long Arm of the Law, that means, you get a little speed boost, a little easier when you're going cross-country. But if you're using Speed of Light, not a big deal. And, of course, don't worry too much. You can heal yourself up if you need to. Divine Protection is great in case you have artillery, or in case, someone has artillery on you. And you can always Divine Shield as well. That'll completely negate artillery. And then, she comes back down, make sure you save Holy Power for Seraphim, and just pop your cooldowns and finish her off. And it's just basically a single target dummy minus the bombs. And that's all there is to Iron Reaver. For Kormrok, there is AoE when you have the hands, but generally I actually just go full single target setup, because most of the fight does not have hands, and at least these days generally they don't last that long, so you don't get that much time. So Seraphim, Execution Sentence, and just Glyph of Judgment for when he jumps. At this point most people will start at the green pool, which is normally what we do, but our tanks were new or something. I don't quite remember. So we started the red pool here, but what you would do is you do line up wings, of course, with your ring, whoever pops that whenever. But you do want to use Seraphim a little bit before the hands come out, because you want to not have 0 holy power as the hands pop up. So you want to maybe pop it like 4 or 5 seconds before, or even less if you want. If you're confident, you can pop it like 3 or 4 seconds before the hands come out. And that way you have a little time to build up enough holy power to at least Divine Storm with Seraphim. Now here, of course, since we didn't do green side first, we don't have hands for a while, so you just single target if this is the case. And another thing is I don't actually even switch the stats to AoE for the hands, just because they die so quickly. Now if they're up longer in your group, you can switch before as well. So maybe switch the Seal of Righteousness before Seraphim, and then AoE more, and you can in that case also use Glyph of Mass Exorcism. I just like having the range on it, since I know the hands don't last that long, and I know he'll jump maybe once or twice in the fight. So if you're other than hand phase though, just single target, pure single target. Use class trinket as well on this, so just make sure you're always Crusader striking him, or Hammer of Righteousness on him. Now when hands are up like this, pull a little holy power and Divine Storm away as much as you can. If you're trying to build holy power rather than Crusader Strike, generally at the start when you're close enough, I'll use Hammer of Righteousness, because you can hit lots of hands and he's a pretty big hitbox. But then if you need to, or if it gets further, you can hit the hand instead. I do recommend trying to Crusader Strike him or Hammer of Righteousness him, if that's a word, just because you don't want to lose your stacks to just hitting a Dragon Hand or a Grasping Hand. Other than that, it's pretty pure single target after that. Just use your burst rotation, follow the priority, Crusader Strike first, because it does so much damage, and it's a low cooldown thanks to Mastery. The damage thanks to Mastery, low cooldown thanks to itself, I suppose. And the only other thing is on green side, when he jumps in, comes out, the Crushing Hand that he does, make sure, you should hit it, as your raid leader probably will ask you to, but just don't Crusader Strike it if you can help it. Try to use your Crusader Strikes on the boss, again, to keep your class trinket buff rolling, so you don't have to reset the stacks. So you look something like Hammer of Wrath on the hand, and then Crusader Strike on the boss, and then Hammer of Wrath on the hand again, and then Templar's Verdict on the hand, and then Hammer of Wrath on the hand, and then back to Crusader Strike on the boss, and so on. So here, we got AoE coming up. I wasn't really watching the timers, so I don't have Seraphim, but you would pop Seraphim maybe here, like a couple seconds here, and then Divine Storm, start Divine Storming with all the holy power you have saved up. Now the hands die pretty quickly, of course, go save people, get as much AoE as you can. And then here, the hand didn't last very long, just because the tank died. I don't know why, but... and then you're just back to single target. So in this execute rotation, of course, you're prioritizing your Hammer of Wrath, then Crusader Strike, and then whichever other Holy Power builder. Generally Exorcism if you can, if it's up, because again, with 4, when you're in Execute phase, you'll never not have an ability to use, thanks to Hammer of Wrath being available, and Exorcism just does more than Judgment does, so if you have to pick between the two, use Exorcism, unless you need a speed boost. And then just finish up the boss. You don't really use Divine Storm ever, unless you have nothing else to do. Alright, here we are at Hellfire High Council. For this fight, it's basically all single target talents, so Seraphim, Execution Sentence. Use Glyph of Judgment in case you need to run across the room, either when you're going to Dia or for mirror images. With Long Over the Log gives you a little speed boost. Nothing too special in the class trinket. So, fight's gonna start here in a little bit. Just open, get some holy power. I'll generally use like Exorcism or Judgment just because it's an extra thing from range. And then, as soon as they pop ring, so you see I only get like 3 holy power, and then there's rings, all wings, and then start Hammer, Crusader Strike, then Seraphim into Execution Sentence, and you just do that. Now, the Empowered Divine Storm, if you get the buff with these two guys close enough to each other, you can use it, and it's worth using, I believe. So go ahead and do that if you want, but mostly just single target, one boss. Try to keep your Crusader Strikes again on a single, like the same boss, whatever you're hitting, Gertog or Jubei. Even if they like do a strat where they kind of switch bosses, like get one low and then move to the next one, still try to, as much as you can, keep your Crusader Strikes on the same target. If not, it's fine, you just access reset, it's not the worst thing, but it will help your DPS mostly if you can do that. So here we just burn him down real quick, like group up pretty high DPS. I mean, if you have Fel Rage, if you get, fixated, make sure you hit Gertog so you're getting that damage bonus on him. And then as soon as he's dead, or whatever, move to the next target. And just pure single target. Now, things to consider, like during Ghosts, or if you have to drop a Reap, Divine Protection is really good. A really, really good cooldown for you. It's 40%, so keep you alive during tough periods of time. Or if you have a big dot, what's it called? Not the one that drops Reap, but if that one's really, really high, the Mark of the Necromancer, then you might want to use that cooldown as well. But as far as DPS goes, just make sure you are just doing your single target rotation. And again, always save. You see here I'm saving Holy Power because Seraphim's coming up, so I can pop it right away. Now, if your group's DPS is super, super high, of course you can pop Avenging Wrath basically on cooldown with Seraphim for the first 3 times. If it's a little less, if it's good but not like great, you just spread it out a little bit more, So just every minute or so until you can't. If you do it 3 times at the start, so at the beginning, on the second Seraphim, and on the third Seraphim at the 1 minute mark, then you'll have it up for ring again at when ring comes up. So if that's the case, go ahead and do that, because otherwise you're kind of wasting your charges of Avenging Wrath if the bosses die too quickly. Normally, though, just about a minute apart. So, wings at the start, Seraphim with nothing, and then Seraphim, Execution Sentence, wings. And, during your burst rotations, remember it's Hammer of Wrath, Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, spend, Templar's Verdict, Hammer of Wrath, Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, and so on and so forth. Always just keep an eye on Seraphim, the timer, the cooldown on it, and just kind of judge how much time you need. And always give yourself a little, like, a second or 2 of leeway, just in case, like, you don't get a proc of, free exorcism, or just something goes wrong. Just make sure you have it up. It's a huge loss if you don't have it up as much as you can, especially at important times. So here's Reap, so I popped Divine Protection, or should, if I had it. I think I already used it, just to not die here. And we just finish up the boss. And that's Hellfire High Council. Nothing too special, just a couple target switches. If you get into mirror images, just chase them down and get Hammer of Wrath hits as you can. Alright, for Kilrogg Deadeye, it's a pure single target fight, unless you're going into visions, really. In which case, I still don't change my talents, so still use Seraphim, still use Execution Sentence. Still use Glyph of Judgment. You can use Glyph of Burden of Guilt to help slow ads that are running, but it depends on your group and what they need. So at the beginning, get as much holy power as you can. As soon as they pop ring, pop wings, and then build up to 5 Seraphim execution sentence. Depending on your group's DPS, the first big add as you see may just die from the ring explosion. If not, be sure to switch to it. But if you do, try to get those Crusader Strikes on Kilrogg so you still have your stacks rolling at full power the whole time. If you go into Visions, which we'll get to in a little bit, you will be doing a little more AoE. But for the most part, just single target here. Your raid leader may ask you for a Hand of Protection on someone to get rid of the debuff, the blood debuff, when they get Heartseeker on them. So just keep that in mind. And then if adds need help, you like as a melee, you actually have quite a bit of ranged abilities, so be sure to use that. You can either use Seal of Justice to slow them down, but you have to get into melee range, or you could just use Judgment with Burden of Guilt or something like that. Now here, we go into Visions. Seraphim inside, if you can, use it, but I wouldn't use any 1 minute cooldowns in here. So I'll build a Holy Power, get Seraphim, and then just AoE. So I switched to an AoE stance here, Seal of Righteousness, rather. And you just kind of AoE down. Make sure you're getting Hammer of Wrath procs as much as you can. Use it when you can, because it's extra Holy Power, which is the main thing in here. And then just a lot of Divine Storm. Just Divine Storm when you have 3 Holy Power. Until you get 20 stacks, then you get out. The little guys, the guys with wings, they do stay alive while they're dying, so you can use that Hammer of Wrathing if you need to. So we get 20 stacks here. I go Stand in Fire, switch back to single target stats. I do that while I'm standing in fire, so I don't waste time out here. And normally you'd wait a little bit for ring. They heroed right away, so I'm actually saving my cooldowns for ring. And what I like to do is, especially if you're on the first visions, save 2 charges of wings, so you can use them back to back once you've come out. So you see, like, once this whole, so I pop everything, wings, Seraphim, execution sentence, ring, pot, etc. And then as soon as, well, I would generally, as soon as a Seraphim comes back up, I will, or would like to pop wings again. Now this boss is just dying too quickly, but if you can, that'll get you your maximum DPS if you're not going to kill him this quickly. So just use it back to back because you still have the visions buff for a while. And that's pretty much it out here. I mean, you can also, don't forget to Hammer of Wrath adds when the boss is higher health so that you can get extra holy power and help out. And that's all for Kilrogg. Moving on to Gorefiend, it's another pure, mostly single target fight. Really no AoE, so you can go Burden of Guilt here to slow adds to help out, or you can also use Seal of Justice when that comes up. Otherwise, just Seraphim, Execution Sentence, or Glyph of Judgment if you're not really too worried about slowing the adds. So at the beginning, I like to wait to see if I get pulled in. In this case, I get pulled in right away. You don't really want to pop your big cooldowns if you get pulled in. And if you're responsible for ring, you definitely want to have a backup just in case. If you get pulled in, obviously the ring's going to blow up inside. It's kind of a waste of damage. But inside, you can either go Seal of Justice, so that when you get to them in melee, you can kill them, or slow them, and then you can also use Judgment with Glyph, Burden of Guilt, that glyph. And you can also use Hammer of Wrath or Fist of Justice. Now there I ran out by accident because I was trying to be sneaky and slide through the middle. But of course that didn't work out. Generally I would stay there for most of the time and then walk out. Outside, make sure you are trying to get Crusader Strikes on the boss to build constant and consistent stacks, but you can use other abilities and you should be on the adds, especially anything that slows to help out. Still keep an eye on your Seraphim. You see there I had a little bit of downtime, but I was also, when you get pulled in, especially on the first one, but anytime, keep an eye on the timer for Feast of Souls, so you know about when you expect it, because you want all your cooldowns for that. You want your 1 minute, your execution, you want your ring, of course, and you want your wings. You want 2 charges of wings if possible, and of course Seraphim. So kind of plan your cooldown usage around that timer. And when you're switching to adds, use everything but Crusader Strike on them if possible. If you can just turn around, smack Gorefiend real quick, and then go back and hit the ad that you're supposed to be killing, just to keep a higher damage stat going from your class trinket. Other than that, you're just killing adds here, and the reason you want 2 charges of Avenging Wrath is because it lasts about 30 seconds, and if people absorb the souls that happen in Feast of Souls, then the phase lasts about a minute, so you might as well do your highest damage during that phase, rather than trying to spend it throughout the fight when it doesn't do as much. So focus on adds, keep an eye on the timer. You see Feast is coming pretty soon. I gotta drop this Touch of Doom here. And you can use Divine Protection to help soak the damage when you have that debuff, or you can Divine Shield it if you need. So during Feast, you build up, I wait for them to ring, finish up the ad. As soon as they ring, I pop Wings, pop Seraphim, pop Execution Sentence, Pots, whatever, if you hero. And try to have, for as many Feasts as you do get, try to save 2 charges of Wings if you think he'll last the full time. Obviously, if you think he's going to last maybe like 15 seconds, then, only save 1. But just keep an eye. Depending on your DPS, you may kill him in the first feast, you may kill him like between the first and second feast, or even on the second or third one. So just kind of base your cooldown usage then. It's way more important to have full damage here. So you see here I Seraphim then Wings again. But it's way more important to have full damage and cooldowns during feast than at any other point in terms of boss damage. So try to save your cooldowns if you can. Have at least, or have up to 2, ideally 2 charges of Avenging Wrath for feast phase, however many you need. So if you don't kill him on the first feast, like we done in this video, then you want to do it second feast. You also want to have 2 if, again, you think that he will last, more than 30 seconds. Significantly more than 30 seconds. Like between, I'd say, 45 seconds to a minute. If you expect that, then save up 2. Otherwise, it's probably not worth, since you'll probably die pretty quickly after your first one ends. Then you're back on the boss at this point. Just doing damage. You have execute rotation, so make sure you're Hammer of Wrathing whenever you can. If you're doing your burst rotation, as always, Hammer of Wrath into Crusader Strike, into Hammer of Wrath, and then dump your Holy Power, Templar's Verdict, and then so on and so forth. And then just save up enough Holy Power, of course, for Seraphim as often as possible, and just watch the timer on the boss for Feast of Souls, so you know about how much time you have left. Then, take care of ads. If the boss isn't low enough to Hammer of Wrath him, of course you can always use it on ads for extra damage, and of course to also get extra Holy Power that you're not normally able to, since if he's too high. Now, if the boss is under 35% and ads are above, you can actually still Hammer of Wrath him if you want for a little extra Holy Power. But they tend to drop pretty quickly, so you should be able to kill them, or bring them into execute range for you. So if you get inside again, I get pulled in, trying to slow stuff, trying to kill things. I realize the boss is pretty low, and Feast is coming up fairly soon, so I'll do what I can here. I don't want to pop any cooldowns. I want to save Seraphim, save Execution Sentence, save Ring, save the Wings cooldown that's coming up. And then as soon as I get out, as soon as Feast starts, I will pop everything and do as much damage as I can to the boss. So here I get out before I die. There's still some ads up. I start building Crusader Strike stacks on the boss, and then we just kind of pop damage. Now at this point, what you normally do is kill the ads first. I was being a little DPS hungry, I suppose, and I knew the boss was pretty much dead, even if the constructs hit everyone, so just kind of moved out to be safe, and then that's all there is to Gorefiend. So single target, take advantage of ads, and take advantage of Feast. For Shadow Lord Iskar, this is a full-on AoE fight for the significant portion of it, and that's the important part. So I go full, most AoE talents I still go Seraphim because I like it for damage. You can go whatever speed boost talent you prefer to help you with wins. I go Glyph of Mass Exorcism, and I do go Light's Hammer on this one. I'll start the fight out in single target stance, a pre-pot, and I do use Discordant Chorus if you have it, of course. I do have it at this point. I did have it. And then here they pop Ring, so I go ahead and Wings, and it's not where I would pop the Ring, or most of my groups would, but it's whenever they pop Ring, pop your Wings, get Seraphim, but I always save Light's Hammer for the ad phase, because it's really not worth it on the boss, and most of the time, depending on your DPS in the group, it won't be up if you use it on the boss for the ad phase. Now, you have to kind of judge your group, figure out how fast the boss is going down, and then you can figure out if you can squeeze in, an extra one, because if you can, why not? But if you can't, you want to have it up for the ad phase. It's very important. So boss is going down pretty quickly. He's going to switch here, so I switch to AoE stats, the Seal of Righteousness, drop Light's Hammer after Seraphim. So Seraphim first, drop that, and then Wings if you have it too. So make sure you Wings before you do both of those. And then just lots of AoE. So use a Hammer, and then Righteousness, Hammer of Righteousness after Wrath, and then back to Hammer. It's basically the same as with Crusader Strike Burst Rotation, but with the AoE version. You can use Exorcism with the Glyph as well. Occasionally, it does a fair amount of damage just because the AoE on it is quite good. Although you're not going to be losing too much if you don't, because of the Mastery buff to your Crusader Strike and Hammer of Righteousness. And then just a lot of Divine Storms. If you get Divine Storm procs, just use them right away. Now, if you get the chance, like here, everything died just as the boss was coming down, you can switch back to your Seal of Righteousness? No, Seal of... I got the name now. But what's the single target one? The one on the very left there that you see I'm in right now. Seal of Truth, I believe it is. And you just... because the boss is single target. If there still adds up, you can leave yourself in AoE stance, but as soon as he is... as soon as he's alone, completely alone, you should probably switch back. Now, it's not the most important thing if you don't get a chance to, because you have to switch back anyway for each ad phase, but it's a little bit of extra damage, especially if you have nothing else to do, like you don't have any builders, Crusader Strike, Judgment, Exorcism, Hammer of Wrath, you don't have any Holy Power to spend, and something like that. So once he goes down to the second ad phase, go back to AoE stance, drop Hammer where you think they're going to be. You can wait for your tanks too, just to be sure that they're in the right area, like that you're going to drop your Hammer in the correct area, and then pop your cooldowns. And so you're then going to the Hammer to Crusader Strike or Exorcism to Hammer, Wrath to spend. Now you want to save. Here I had to save for Seraphim because it was coming up, so I wasn't able to AoE right there. And I don't have wings up right now until just there. So then, as soon as you can, pop things. And the reason I didn't is because I had to pop wings again when they ringed. It's unfortunate, but you just kind of follow that. Whenever there's a ring, make sure you have wings up to take advantage of it. And then here, the Corrupted Talent Priest is still up, so I'm focused on that. And at any time that the boss or the main target is not below 35, you can always try to Hammer of Wrath even if you're not in Avenging Wrath under the effects of that, to get extra Holy Power, like use a low health ad or something. And because you're not using your class trinket, ideally here, you don't have to worry too much about hitting the same target with Crusader Strike or Hammer, but if you are, because you don't have Discordant Chorus or the Empty Drinking Horn, then, do take care of that, be wary, and be aware of what you're hitting as much as possible. And also, even with Seraphim, you want to be careful about the timing, because you want to make sure that you have Seraphim at the start of each ad phase, so you have the maximum amount of damage, killing those ads really quickly to get through the fight. Even if that means you do less on the boss in between the phases. So just keep an eye on the timers, on his health. Remember, he transitions at 70%, and then 45%, and then 20%. Alright, now we get to the last phase here. So you can stay in Seal of Righteousness, the AoE one here, or you can go the single target Seal of Truth, which is fine as well. It's not a huge loss either way. All it does, what it does mean is you should be using Hammer into Crusader Strike, because there's only 3 targets rather than 4. And generally, Crusader Strike actually does more than Hammer of Righteousness, unless there are at least 4 targets. So you can do everything else. You can still Divine Storm, it's still worth it. You just Crusader Strike instead. And especially when it goes down to 2, then you start using Templar's Verdict again, rather than Divine Storm. Now when the boss lands, if it makes it 3 again, you can Divine Storm. And at this point, we're just cleaning up the ads, and then finishing up the boss. So as soon as all the ads die, you can eventually go back to single target, Seal of Truth. I believe I kind of got distracted, and I don't go back for a little while. Even as soon as there are 2 things, like right here, you can go back, technically. I didn't really bother because I know the ads should die, ideally, pretty quickly. And you see I just threw Hammer down with Seraphim. It's because it's the end of the fight, so you don't need to save it for any more ad phases. And at this point there, I go back to single target stance, Seal of Truth, and finish up the boss, using your execute rotation. Hammer, Crusader Strike, Exo, and then Judgment in that priority order. And Templar's Verdict whenever you can. And that's pretty much all there is to Shadow Lord Iskar. A simple single target without using too many cooldowns and watching the timers when he's alone, and then a max AoE but cleave off of the main ad in the ad phases. So. For Socrethar the Eternal, it's mostly single target fight. You don't really generally have to deal with ghosts as a melee. So I go Seraphim, Execution, Glyph of Judgment. You can go Glyph of Burden of Guilt to help out with like a random ghost that gets out, but it's generally not too useful or important. At the beginning, you generally don't ring, so what I do, if you don't, is I just build a full 5 Holy Power and then Seraphim, Wings, Execution, and then go off on him the burst rotation. Hammer to Hammer of Wrath, to Crusader Strike, to Hammer of Wrath, Tumblers, and so on. Again, just watching it when Seraphim start to get closer and closer to being off cooldown. Now, if you do use Ring at the start, pop Wings as soon as they ring and try to, keep it as close to ring cooldown as possible. Like, keep your Seraphim as close and your Execution sentence as close. You don't really use the Empowered Divine Storm here on single target unless you literally have nothing else to do, like you can't do anything else. But yeah. So you just stay here. Now, I was able to use Seraphim twice before he dies, just because I know the group's DPS is about a minute or so before the boss pops out. So if you just keep an eye on if your DPS is going too hard on the construct and it dies really quickly, save your Seraphim so you have it for the Dominator. Now, your group will use Ring at different times, so again, whenever it is, use Wings, use your cooldowns. Save your cooldowns for Ring if you know that's when your group is going to use it. I use it here, or we use it here rather, to blow up on the Dominator, rather than like for the Dominator DPS, but just kind of keep an eye out. Now, if you're going to use damage on the Dominator, be careful with your Execution sentence on the boss, because he'll be immune, and it's going to be like a huge waste. You can either just wait, or you can drop it on the Dominator if you think it'll survive long enough. But not getting that last little burst, like huge burst of damage, Execution sentence is a huge loss. Now, while the boss is immune, I don't think you can Crusader Strike him to get those stacks, so I go ahead and hit the Dominator if I have to build Holy Power to kill it faster. If not, you can try to wait it out. Remember, it lasts 10 seconds on you, so if you can kill the Dom in less than 10 seconds, that is, it's worth saving it. The Shadow Callers, if they're in melee range, or even if they're just in range of your Hammer of Wrath, you can sometimes use them as they're low to get extra Holy Power, because right now you can't hammer the boss when his health is too high. Also, if you're asked to kill them, like when they get grouped into the group, or they are interrupted and shoved into the group, just remember to try to Crusader Strike Solo Socrethar as much as possible, just because it'll keep your stacks rolling at full strength. Now here, I know I'm not going to kill the boss, or I'm not going to kill the Dominator fast enough to keep my buff up, so I go ahead and Crusader Strike him when I have to in rotation. Save that Seraphim for him if possible. In this case, it didn't quite line up, so I go ahead and we finish it off anyway. I think we heroed for that, or Bloodlusted. And if there are things close enough like Shadow Callers, you can Divine Storm if it's buffed, like that, with the free buffed ones. If you're hitting at least 2 things, the boss and something else, it becomes worth it. Plus, you can help out your ranged as they're supposed to be killing those. Another thing to note, just be aware of your positioning in relation to the portal. The Ghost Portal, give your construct an easier time, give your ranged an easier time. And if there's a lot of Mannari that pop out, or you get a huge debuff, like many stacks of that Shadow Caller debuff, make sure you are using Divine Protection. If you get hit by a ghost, or you're about to, you can Divine Shield it, and it will protect you. To be safe, I would keep the shield on, like Divine Shield if you use that, if you've gotten hit already, until the debuff is gone. Just check yourself. If you still have the debuff, you take the shield off, you'll get feared. If you don't have the debuff, then just remove it, either with a cancel or a macro, or just right click it off. And then just as always, keep your cooldowns rolling. You saw there, kind of missed the scene here, but when Dominator's up, when Ring's about to come up, make sure you have your Seraphim, your Execution sentence, your cooldowns ready. And that's all there is to Socrethar for Ret Pally. The Fel Lord Zakuun is practically just a pure single target dummy, so Seraphim, Execution sentence, whatever speed boost you prefer. I like Long Arm of the Law on this. You can also go Speed of Light if you need, and Glyph of Judgment in case I need to run out for something like to soak some weird stuff. You can use your Demon Trinket, but generally if you have a Class Trinket, it's going to be better because you don't really ever have to change targets. So this is perfect boss to just test your damage rotation on. So as soon as they ring, wings, build up Holy Power, Seraphim, Execution. The only thing to consider is that you might want to save, or you do want to save your cooldowns for when you pop Ring the second time and or Hero Bloodlust. Typically at 30%, but whenever they call it, work with it, work with your group. But just practice your Burst Rotation, Hammer of Wrath, Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, Tempest Verdict, and so on. Just like that. Now, depending on how quickly your group kills this boss, you can, like on Reaver, like on Council, like on any fight that you kill very, very quickly, you can use wings on the second, and I do on this boss because I expect to kill it pretty quickly. On the second Seraphim, I also wings again to get maximum burst DPS. I'm pushing down really fast because he doesn't last past the ring generally, very long at all. So I know it's kind of a waste if I don't shove as many Avenging Wraths into my rotation as possible. Now, if you're taking a little bit longer on this boss, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, which is pretty rare, but if you are for some reason, then spread them out a little more. Use wings every minute until you can't anymore, and then just use it whenever it lines up with the cooldown, like ring especially. It should always be up for ring. So if he runs away, you can use Judgment and Exorcism to hit him. Judgment, if you have long arm, will help you run toward him. Just don't end up in front of him and die, because that's really bad, and then you'll probably get yelled at by your raid leader. And then just DPS him. Just stay behind him. Block what you can. Do the mechanics as you're supposed to and are told to. You don't need to use Divine Storm pretty much ever unless there's nothing else to use. And then just build up Holy Power. Now, as soon as you get 35%, you can start doing your Execute rotation. I do recommend trying to save your Hammer of Wrath if you're about to hit 30%. Just because if you use it and then it's on cooldown for 5 seconds at worst, when you want to pop wings and stuff, then you have to change your rotation. You're missing out on buffed wings or buffed Hammer of Wrath. But at this point, we have Hero, we pop ring, he's at 30%, pop all your cooldowns, Seraphim, Execution settings that you do want to save for this phase. Talk to your raid leader or just listen to when they want to pop certain cooldowns and kind of line up with that. And then just burst rotation all the way down. And do as much as you can. Now at the very, very end of the fight, if you are really, really close to killing him, within 1 second, you might just use a skill instead of using Seraphim, like Templar's Verdict. But if you think he'll last for at least a few more seconds, you might want to use Seraphim anyway for that extra damage. And that's all there is. It's a nice, simple target dummy. As far as Xhul'horac is concerned, there's a lot of you'll probably hear a lot of different things about what's best or what you should use as far as talents are concerned. I do still use Seraphim. I like it for the damage. Plus, I don't like having to try to get Final Verdict buffs ready for imps. You can use Glyph of Mass Exorcism if you want. I like the range though, just because he moves a lot. Sometimes depending on how good your group is at fire. I actually use Holy Prism a lot, and I would use Discordant Chorus if I had it at this time. I didn't, so I'm using Class Trinket. I would recommend Discordant Chorus though. The reason I use Holy Prism, so at the start here, I'll just briefly, I'll again wait for ring. As soon as they ring, pop wings, get 5 Holy Power Seraphim, and if you're using, whether you're using Holy Prism or Lights Hammer, you will wait for the imps. But just do your burst rotation, Hammer, Crusader Strike, Hammer, or Hammer of Righteousness in the middle if you need, and then pop Divine Storm or Crusader Strike, or Templar's Verdict rather. Just the generic burst rotation. Now, the reason I use Holy Prism, I did some napkin math based on the tooltips and such in the game, and I found that Lights Hammer, even if you have 5 targets, which is the max that Holy Prism hits, and they actually stay alive and in the zone for the full 14 seconds, it actually does a little bit less than getting 3 Holy Prisms in the same time to hit 5 targets. And a lot of times, if you don't have DKs especially, you don't... the imps aren't always grouped up that nicely, and you don't hit more than 5 targets generally. But if you did, then Lights Hammer would be better, again, if they stayed the whole time. As far as DPS in the boss versus the big ads, the named ads, they share health, so whatever you hit is fine. If you have Class Trinket, make sure you're keeping that buff up. If you're using Discordant Chorus instead, you don't have to worry about that. Always, when you can, get picks with Hammer of Wrath on low health ads, whether it's the big named ad or an imp or a unstable void fiend, just for extra holy power and the like. If you're using whether you're using Light Hammer or a Holy Prism, make sure you use it only for imps in the first 3 phases, because otherwise it's not really worth that much. You know, you're losing it. You might as well use execution settings if you're just going to hit 1 or 2 things. But I'm just hitting the boss because, again, I do have class trinket. Because the ads and the big ad and the boss share health both ways. And you can use Divine Storm procs, of course, whenever there are there's more than one thing you're hitting. Generally, you'll be using your Holy Power on Divine Storm rather than Templar's Verdict whenever the imps are up, but if they're not, then you can Templar's Verdict. And just watch your Seraphim timer as usual. Even if you end up having to Seraphim right when imps come down, you don't have any Holy Power, you'll still have Holy Prism, which is another nice thing. You always have immediate damage. All of Holy Prism's damage happens instantaneously, so you don't have to like hold the ads there and hope that they stay there the whole time. I use a self-cast macro for it. That's in my other video, my Ret Paladin DPS guide video. I can put it in the description as well here, just so that I don't have to worry about, you know, targeting myself or targeting someone. But another thing to consider too, though, is that you do want to have the ability to cast Holy Prism just as on its own, because at the end, when there's no ads up, you can still use Holy Prism on the boss, like, alone, if you want to use it to help heal out as well. It does a little bit more if you hit it like 2 or 3 times in the time that you get one Light's Hammer, but even if it doesn't do that much less, and it's not a huge deal because the phase lasts a really short time. Most of the fight, though, you are targeting whatever you're supposed to be targeting. Again, a lot of people say you have to hit the big ad rather than the boss. I believe it is shared health both ways on it. So, you know, hit what you're supposed to be hitting. Do focus on the imps though if you can. I mean, you're supposed to be killing the small ads at least a very high priority. So, you know, use your AoE, but also focus them down, interrupt them, use your stun, your fist or hand or fist of justice or hammer of justice, whatever you have. Just make sure you're taking care of those, because that is really important. As soon as he gets into phase 4, it's all single target. You can switch back to single target stance. Definitely use Divine Protection whenever you need to in this fight, to clear fire, to take fire. If you have one of the surges, if you know there's an explosion that's going to happen, it's a huge cooldown on a very, very short timer, especially if you spec into the shorter cooldown. But just single target, you can use Holy Prism. If you're going to use it in phase 4, use it on the boss, so that it heals people, and it does actually more to the boss than it does if you use it on yourself and it hits him. And so that's Xhul'horac. Tyrant Velhari, pure single target. So single target talents. I kind of started this the recording late here, but just pure single target Seraphim, Execution, Judgment in case you need to move in phase 3 or something. And you just, as soon as they ring again at the beginning, Wings, pop Hammer of Wrath, build up enough Holy Power to get Seraphim to Execution sentence, and then go from there. Now, if you have the ring popped, I do recommend you try to get in range of the first ad when it comes down, because the explosion, if you wait at least a couple seconds, will happen around when it comes. As usual, if Divine Storm is buffed, you can use it. It is worth using it on the 2 targets, not on 1, but if there's 2, it's worth using. If you have something more important to use, though, like building Holy Power for Seraphim, of course do that. Now, if you really want to min-max with Class Trinket here, definitely use your Crusader Strike on Tyrant the whole time, if she's close enough, just to make sure you have the full strength buff at all times. Divine Protection is great defensive if you need to use it for some reason. Annihilating Strikes, Infernal Tempest with a lot of melee and they're kind of sloppy, stuff like that. So if you can, keep your buff rolling on the boss. I was a little lazy here, so I just hit the ad with it instead. But that will force you to reset your stacks. Once they get low, make sure you're taking advantage of Execute rotation, or like using your Hammer of Wrath to hit whatever's low. Especially in the case that you may not be killing, say, the ad in second phase. I think in this group that this is just a random pug, so I think they actually, a lot of people end up killing the second ad, but we had such a high DPS, it was okay. In that case, though, if they happen to do that, you know, take advantage, use Hammer on the ad, and then Crusader Strike back on the boss. And, you know, just take advantage of whenever you can use that extra Hammer of Wrath, get it. Other than that, just make sure you're keeping your cooldowns rolling all the time. As soon as Seraphim's up, you want to be able to pop it, so pull your Holy Power, make sure you have 5 when it's up. So at this point, what I'll do is you see me move my mouse over, whatever works for you. I focus it, though, so that I can't interrupt it. I do have a macro where I can hold shift and it'll interrupt my focus. But whatever works for you, have an ability to interrupt it, especially if you're supposed to. Again, any Divine Storm procs here I will use, even though technically it's a little bit of a loss to single target. It still hits the ad, and eventually the ad does need to die. So it's somewhat effective DPS, and you're not losing a huge amount single target. They end up killing it here with the ring explosion, and I guess some people were focused on it. And then we just push the boss, pure single target. If you have your wings up with Seraphim, you're using your burst rotation, hammer into Crusader Strike, into hammer, into Tempest Verdict. And it just goes like this the whole time. So whenever ads are up, you can use a buffed and free Divine Storm. Now this third ad is a little bit of an exception. As soon as he starts casting, doing his protection on the boss, it's not worth using Divine Storm buffed, and also not worth generally Hammer of Wrathing the boss, because she'll be lower for a while. As you can see, she's well within the 35% range, unless you really need that extra holy power. To line up something, say get your Seraphim up, but you won't do any damage to her because she's taking a lot less. So you don't really pop all your stuff on the ad. You could Crusader Strike potentially again on the boss to keep your stacks, but again, it does a decent amount of damage normally. So if you use it on the boss, you're losing all of that damage practically. But you could. That's something to try out and consider if you want to go above and beyond. And I'm not entirely certain if that's actually a buff. Damage loss or not, but I do want to get the ad down as fast as possible. That's another thing, you'd be losing damage on the ad, so it's a little meter padding rather than doing the fight correctly. So I think it'd be safer to just do your full rotation on the ad, the third ad. For everything else though, you can hit the boss with Crusader Strike, and then you just finish up. Single target, you're below 35, and you just finish her off with your basic rotation. Now on Mannoroth, there is some AoE, especially in the early phases, and it's just quite important, but I just go full single target because generally the fight kind of gets difficult when he's just alone, or just the Infernals, and you don't generally hit those. So Seraphim, Execution, is Glyph of Judgment for extra range on, coupled with Long Arm of the Law, which is worth a little speed boost. You can use Speed of Light as well if you feel more comfortable with that for Shadow Force in phases 3 and 4, but that is up to you. So at the beginning, they pop rings, so I pop wings with that. Get as holy power as quick as I can to 5. Seraphim, Execution. Now I tend to use, this is what your group will allow or not. I tend to start on a different one than they're supposed, than people focus, just because Execution sentence generally I found wasn't getting its full duration, so it didn't explode on them, and I lost a lot of damage because it just died too fast. So I started doing it on other things, like on another ad, another summoner, just to make sure I got full value off of that. But, as soon as you're hitting, as soon as higher priority targets are up, like this Doomlord, go ahead and switch to it. You will have to lose your stacks in the first phase a decent amount, just because things keep dying. The things you're hitting die pretty quickly. So don't worry about that too much. If you get the chance to AoE Imps, though, go ahead and do that with Divine Storm. And especially the buffed one. Now, you can use the buffed Divine Storm because it gives you a little bit more range on it. You can sometimes hit Infernals. Also, you can hit Infernals technically once they land for a couple seconds before they start pulsing. Don't die for it, though. It's not worth it. And but you can definitely use them for Hammer of Wrath to get extra holy power, and same with Imps. Although Imps die pretty quickly, so you may find yourself just trying to target it, and then it dies before you get to it. So here I get a little bonus damage on the Infernals. It started pulsing, so I stopped walking toward it, and then Imps come down. Divine Storm, I see a bunch of them. So hit Divine Storm, get a bunch of extra damage. Now you do want to make sure you don't get AoE happy and forget to pull Holy Power for Seraphim, though, because that'll actually lower your DPS in the long run. For most of that, I actually stay and single target the Seal of Truth rather than Seal of Righteousness, just because focused damage where it really counts, and the AoE is pretty... it's useful and it's important, but not such a big deal here. Now, whenever Imps are coming down, there's a timer. I believe it's called Fel Implosion or something. I forget what it's called, but there's a timer for it on your boss mod. Keep some Holy Power saved if you can, so you can get some Divine Storms in. Take advantage of that AoE, but I recommend, if you're going to AoE off of Mannoroth, use Hammer of Wrath on Mannoroth so you don't lose your class trinket buff. You don't lose those stacks. It's a pretty big hitbox, so I do recommend using, you can use Hammer of Wrath off on him, or you can just Crusader Strike if you're not too worried about the AoE and you just want to use Divine Storm to get that. Now, same thing here with the Infernals. You saw I had a Divine Storm proc, so I used it to hit that Infernal on the left. And then I see it's low, so I Hammer of Wrath it to get a little extra holy power that I wouldn't normally get. Now, I wasn't paying attention to the Fel Imp thing, but I do get quick holy power thanks to that Hammer of Wrath. Get a Divine Storm, get a proc, use it again on the Imps, and then, you know, keep going like that. So take advantage of the AoE on the Imps whenever possible, and it is important anyway, so you're not really just padding meters. Now here is another low Infernal. Throw a Hammer at it, and get extra holy power. And then just single target rotation. You know, follow the priority for builders. Move out of mechanics. If you're feeling like a zealous or like overzealous, you can also use other abilities on Infernals, but it's not generally your job as a Ret Pally. And just Hammer of Wrath is enough to help out, and kind of gives you that extra holy power that you can't even use or get normally because the boss isn't at 35% until phase 4. Other than that, it's just single target. You move out of stuff. Sometimes you can catch again. You see that they just landed there. If I had enough, I could have Divine Stormed them if I wanted to, like poke in, Divine Storm, run out. But again, it's pretty dangerous sometimes, and you don't want to stress your healers out or your group. And if you die, your group will not be happy with you. So here in phase 3, there's no more imps, so you can stop saving your holy power for them. I just wait for my cooldown there, just pulling it for Seraphim, all of that holy power, and then just back to my burst rotation. Hammer to Crusader Strike, to Hammer, into Templar's Verdict, and then rinse and repeat. Now the timing on the ring can be pretty tricky because at this point there's less stuff that people are hitting just the range or killing the Infernals. So you might have to just get some practice on judging like when they're going to pop ring. But again, whenever they happen to, you know, that's when you pop your wings. Even if you think it's wrong, like that's just, you just go with it. Now for Shadow Force, if you do happen to get it on you, use whatever speed boost you have. If you get it, I recommend using at least Crusader Strike as many times as possible before you get out of range of him, just because it's the melee you can't use at range. One of your only ones, actually. And of course Templar's Verdict, if you have enough holy power for that. So if you're getting pushed back, you know, of course if he's an Executor, you have wings up, you can use Hammer as much as possible, but between the other three, Crusader Strike, if possible, again, it does the most damage once you get more gear, and also you can't hit him from, it's just an extra holy power that you can do before you get pushed away. Other than that, you can still take snipes on the Infernals that are low with Hammer of Wrath. Now we're getting to phase 4 here, so at this point I completely leave it to the range to finish up Infernals, because now you can Hammer of Wrath the boss. And you just do full, you know, your full burst. If they hero, if they bloodlust here, go ahead and, you know, pop hot with that. Whenever rings up, you know, pop your cooldowns with that. Save your Seraphim. Make sure you're pulling that holy power, getting full value. You know, so it lines up with everything else. And then just finish the boss. If you get Mannoroth's Gaze, that's one thing I forgot to mention actually. You can use Divine Shield, but what you want to do is actually wait, like leave it on. Normally you'll like use Divine Shield to get rid of the debuff, then take it off. Like take off the buff so you do more damage. You want to wait till the debuff actually tries to explode on you. Otherwise you will actually get horrified again, and you'll just take the damage. You can also pre-Divine Protection. This is also good to use on Shadow Force here in Phase 4. But you can pre-Divine Protection Mannoroth's Gaze. And other than that, though, just full single target, burst him down, save your holy power for Seraphim when it's coming up, and that's pretty much it. Some people actually get upset sometimes when you Divine Shield, but as long as you don't explode it like early, or you keep it on people, it's fine. And it'll save some damage on you too. Your healers will like that. If you're going to use something like a racial, like a human racial or something to break that Horrify though, just know that if you explode early you might kill yourself if no one else is around you. Just small things to consider. So here we finally finished the boss up. It's kind of messy. It happens. Just pop as many cooldowns as I can. Line up whatever you can. So when it gets messy like that, you know, just line up whatever you can, like Seraphims with your execution at least, even if you don't have wings, you know, still line it up. Use them on cooldown. And that'll do you nicely in a long fight like Mannoroth. Alright, now at Archimonde, we've got basically a full single target fight in terms of talents I like to do, so Seraphim Execution. I use Speed of Light generally, if I remember to switch to it, because it lines up perfectly with Allure of Flames, but you can use these Long Arm of the Law as well. I use Burden of Guilt if you are responsible for slowing stuff like the Star inside the Banish, and things like that. As far as trinkets go, the class trinket will perform really, really well if you use it appropriately, but what you have to do is you have to keep using your Crusader Strike on Archimonde, which can be really taxing on your attention. Since there's a lot of ad switching, you have to switch to Doomfires, Deathcallers, stuff like that, Overfiends. So if you want a little more ease of mind, if you have the Heirloom Trinket, the Demon one, you can use it on this fight and you'll do quite well with it, and you don't have to worry about always switching back to hit the boss with Crusader Strike. Save your Speed of Light always for Allure of Flames, if possible, in the first 2 phases. And then just follow single target rotation. Whenever they ring, you wings. I also like to wing Avenging Wrath when Execution Sentence comes back up. So this fight's decently long, so I won't do the second Seraphim and Avenging Wrath again. I'll wait a minute or so it lines up decently at the end. Since I was using Class Trinket here, I will hit Crusader Strike the boss, then I go back, Hammer of Wrath, the Doomfire. Now I see Seraphims coming up, so I had to pull a little Holy Power for that. And so, but I'm mostly hitting what I'm supposed to. Try to hit the ad here, but try to get Crusader Strikes on the boss only to keep that buff rolling. If you get Divine Storm proc, you can use it on, as long as there's at least one ad and the boss in range. So at least 2 targets. But generally it's a single target on whenever you're supposed to hit. So be wary of your timers here on Seraphim. I see I'm getting pretty close, so I make sure I have enough Holy Power. Pop it immediately. Now here I go in to help them because I see there's a lot that got knocked up in the air. Pop Divine Protection. As usual, if there are ads that are low health, besides being, higher priority than the boss, it can also give you extra Holy Power with that Hammer of Wrath, even if you're not under the effect of Avenging Wrath. There's things to consider. Try to snipe those because you can't normally use them. It's just free Holy Power and free damage on things that you're supposed to be hitting anyway. If you want to be safe, you can always grab one of those orbs. It's not really relevant to your rotation, but can help you in case you get hit by a Deathcaller. Now in phase 2, there's no more Doomfire, which is nice. But what you want to do is as soon as he hits that percentage where the ad starts spawning, so he goes 10% below, so 55%, then you want to start, just keep an eye out, watch the ads as they come out of the gate, and they do come out of the gate in the top right of the screen. They pop out of there, so keep an eye on that, make sure you have Divine Storm ready, but most of all, just get your Seraphim rolling when it's supposed to. I don't actually switch to Seal of Righteousness here, although you could if you wanted to, because I'm more concerned about damage on the boss and or the ad that I'm using. Now I have a proc here, so I go ahead and use that. And you start using Divine Storm when you can hit multiple ads, at least 3. Speed of Light away. Build Holy Power when you can. When you're running, if you run really quickly like I did, sometimes you'll outrange all the stuff. So you can still use Judgment or Exorcism to get hit them from range, which is why I don't take Mass Exorcism Glyph, as well as the fact that you might as well just use Hammer of Righteousness, your Crusader Strike, but for AoE on the boss. So you have your Class Trinket buff if you're using that. Plus it does a fair amount of damage anyway, thanks to the Mastery buff. But you could technically use a Glyph of Mass Exorcism if you wanted, but it's just for phase 2, and a lot of times you're going to be moving away from the boss in other phases, like in phase 3 and in the portals and such. So AoE during phase 2 is kind of your phased AoE. You definitely want to be focused on the ads, but if possible, if you're using the Class Trinket again, this is why it's kind of tedious, is you want to be hitting the boss with that whenever you use it. Just because it won't reset your stacks if you do. So if you kind of want just an easier playstyle, definitely grab the Heirloom Trinket if you have it. The Ground-Tooth Warhorn, I believe it is called. That way you don't have to always be switching to the boss or using a macro that messes with your targeting or something sometimes. Now we're in phase 3 here, so there's no more ads. It's pure single target. Things to consider here: you can use your taunt, your Reckoning, for Infernals, because you can tank them and you can heal yourself through it and you can do a fair amount of damage to it. You won't always be in range to keep your Class Trinket buff if you're using it on the boss, which is another reason it's kind of nice to use the other trinkets sometimes here. And then when you go in Banish, same thing. Obviously you can't hit the boss at all. for more than 10 seconds generally. So just focus on the boss here. I do like to save your speed boost, whatever it is, for when you get out of the banish if you're assigned to a group, because that way you're not sitting in that damaging little circle swirly for too long. But you just do your damage whenever they call for heroism or bloodlust or whatever you're using, and they pop your wings. Do what you can with what cooldowns you have, your pots. When the Rain of Chaos comes down, you should probably consider using Divine Protection, because it's a really, really big cooldown for you, and it prevents you from getting insta-killed and one-shot, and definitely kill the Infernals. Now, I'm in Group 2 here for the Banish, so I pop in. And inside, you can use Seal of Justice if you need, or Burden of Guilt with Judgment. The Glyph of Burden of Guilt with Judgment to slow the star. And as long as it's not fixated on you, you can actually just go into melee range and attack it. Now here it is on me, so I try to keep it away. I'm slowing it with Judgment as I can, and I'm just kiting it using Exorcism, Judgment, Hammer of Wrath, etc. Anything to hit it. You can also interrupt the ad in there, and once you kill it, maybe you pop out. So save Speed of Light. You see I have Speed of Light ready. We walk out, Speed of Light, get the hell out of that circle because it hurts, and then just back on the boss. More single target, pop Seraphim, have that ready. And if the ad's going to die in there, I would save Seraphim if it's close to coming up. Save enough so you can Seraphim right away on the boss and just do your full damage on it. I tend not to use executions that's on it unless my group really needs it. So again, I actually ended up popping Divine Protection a little earlier, which I preferred not to do. But, use whatever you need. You have Divine Shield as well. You have some self-heals. Now here I actually taunt I pick up the Infernal here. And notice it's kind of healing because it's close to one, so I bring it away. I just do damage on it. Do as much damage as you can. Of course I'm losing my class trinket stacks, but that's okay because it's worth. And you should be hitting Infernals anyway, but you could Hammer of Wrath them. But you should be hitting them anyway, actually. So that's pretty much all there is to Archimonde. Then you just finish them off here, single target, execute rotation. And that's how it's, that's all there is to it. So if you guys like this video, if you found it helpful, feel free to leave a like, hit it with a like, hit a subscribe on my channel if you like videos like this. And hope to see you guys next time.